Well, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome. We're excited to have you here. Bill Middleton from Middleton Elite Coaching with two great friends and mentors of mine today to introduce you to Shaun Rawls from Atlanta, Georgia, and Matt Cuccaro from Hilton Head, South Carolina. I'm going to let the two of them do their own intros in just a second and why we're so excited to have them. Today, we're here for a treat, largely, I would say, about both self-leadership and the leadership of others. And these guys come from very unique perspectives, and I think are going to add a lot of value to you. So without further ado, Matt, I'm going to toss it to you first, if you wouldn't mind. Tell us a little bit about who you are and your areas of expertise, please.
I'll give it a go. My evolution came from the sport world and the human performance world there, and has continued to matriculate more and more into the business space. And I think the sport part really resonates with folks. It's tangible, it's live. There's people on a platform, right? And you're seeing their responses and their emotion. And so being around that has really shaped my delivery and who I am. So yeah, I kind of where I got into the performance psychology space. I was a competitive golfer and gave that a go, and golf exposes all of it. For those of you who play, kind of know. And then I decided to go back to graduate school. So I was the captain of a national junior team and watched these junior athletes who are now on the PGA and LPGA tours and watched them grow to be who they are today, these household names. And I wanted to unpack it. I was curious about what makes them these next level performers. So I'm back to grad school. And then that's when Hilton Head came calling. So for a decade, I was in this really interesting environment to where athletes, so teenagers, they go to school together, they train together, and they compete in the same tournaments together. And they had to coexist. So helping them and their coaches understand this idea of pushing each other, collaborating, which I'm sure is a lot of what we'll talk about today to reach elite performance.
Absolutely. Thanks, Matt. Shaun, how about for you, sir?
Oh my gosh. So I opened the first Keller Williams Realty office in the state of Georgia in 1999. And there were, I think, 5,000 Keller Williams agents on the planet at the time. And we grew that into about 6 offices and ended up being the #1 real estate company in the state of Georgia. And with about 2,000-ish agents doing over $5 billion in sales. Took over the New York tri-state region for a few years and then sold out of that. And now I pretty much just do a little coaching, do some speaking, wrote a book called Effortless, which you know well. But my background is basically working with top producers in the real estate industry and helping them grow their businesses to be something more sustainable than traditionally it has been. So that's a passion you and I both share, I know, Bill. But that's pretty much my background.
Absolutely. Well, I'm thankful to have both of you guys here and your infinite wisdom. I know as we were doing our prep call a couple of weeks ago, we all agreed that we could probably just sit here and chat for hours and hours on end, and keeping this to roughly 1 hour might be the biggest challenge that we face today. That being said, for those of you who are with us live, we will do some Q&A toward the end of today's session. So as you're listening to the things that Shaun and Matt will share with you, if you have some things that you'd like for follow-up, we'll have an opportunity to do that. Shaun, I'll start with you, and you can take this any direction that you want to go. One of the many things that I know you've done well in your real estate career was leading your firms through arguably the most challenging real estate market since the Great Depression. And I think there are some things that we're observing in today's market that certainly aren't the same, yet the resilience that was required then, we're seeing some people kind of dust that off. And those maybe who didn't live through that market in this business, maybe getting caught on their heels a little bit. So I wonder if you might speak to that, please.
Yeah, it's this is a tough time because it throws you a real curveball, and it's not the business that you're accustomed to having, right? So there's a lot of uncertainty in the market. There's a lot of uncertainty if you're leading in terms of what's the right path for me. And if you go back to 2007, I think we were the #3 or 4 real estate company in Atlanta. By the time we were full on in the last bad patch. And when we looked around, we thought we really needed to separate fact from fiction, because there was so much fear in the marketplace, and that created a lot of misinformation that we noticed. So we started creating a statistics presentation for our agent, and we thought, if we can get our agents to embrace statistics, we can be the tellers of truth in the marketplace, and we can cut through all the emotional information and try to provide something logical that'll actually provide some certainty, whether you like it or not, and hopefully some direction that would be helpful. And as it turns out, we ended up, when all this, before the last thing was over in 2010, we had become the #1 real estate company in Georgia. And it was really because I think of that move when we think about it. And now that I look at what's happening right now, we've got a lot of uncertainty as well. And I think you've got buyers and sellers who are making decisions without having great information. They're making fear-based or emotional decisions based on whether they buy or don't buy, or sell or don't sell. And I think agents can do a better job of tapping into what do we know to be true, and how do we deliver those messages, and just get good at reporting the weather. We might not be able to change the fact that it's snowing or raining, but we sure as hell can report it and tell the accurate temperature so that people know what to wear today. And I think that we're going to get better at just reporting the news instead of feeding into the emotional, fear-based loop that people end up finding themselves in.
Yeah. Which is probably a really good segue, Matt. You were with our board of advisors group just last week, and we were talking about ranges of emotions and positive and negative emotions. And certainly don't want to lead you into a specific spot here. However, maybe there's something in the emotion that Shaun was mentioning that you'd like to follow up on.
Oh, it's beautiful, right? Actually, I did a TED Talk entitled "Courage: Leaning into Fear." Right. So the idea that we are emotional beings, right, and learning to sit with that emotion and just understand their signals. We don't have to dive bomb on them or react to every single moment of them, right? So being able to pause, I love where Shaun went with that, right? Kind of look at the statistical significance, use that as your measure, and then pay attention to these momentary ebbs and flows, and you don't have to respond immediately to them. That's actually a choice you have.
One of the best pieces of advice I ever got, Matt, I was probably 22. I got a real estate license when I was 18, finished school at Georgia Tech and went full time. But I had a commercial broker that kind of took me under his wing. And he said something to me one day in the middle of something that I'd never forgotten. He said, listen, when you deal with an emotional objection, you cannot respond emotionally. You have to respond logically. And he said, likewise, if you're dealing with a logical objection, you can't respond with logic. You have to respond with emotion. He said, never fight emotion with emotion and never fight logic with logic. And it was really great advice at the time. And there's probably some people on this that watch this that probably need to hear that. But it's even when you think about the loops that we get ourselves in, right? Because we have emotional reactions to things. But the only way to pull it out is to zoom out and go, okay, get a hold of yourself, think about what you got. And running a business, I don't think is really much different than that.
Oh, spot on, right? And again, the big thing I talked about with Bill, right, is that, and with his board of advisors group, is we are emotional beings. We can't negate that, right? And they are nice beacons to showcase, and they help us make decisions, but we should be grounded in some type of statistical significance in order to do that. So I love how you said that, Shaun, right? It's an and, not an either or.
That's correct. Yeah. We need them both.
Well, and talking about statistical significance and risk, Matt, one of the things you and I were talking about recently, and you even gave the analogy of some of the collegiate golfers that you work with right now. And I'll just set this up briefly, and then you run with it as much as you want to. And standing on the tee box and looking at this really tight fairway and determining, do you take the calculable risk there, or do you kick the risk down the line for the second shot? So I wonder if you might play with that a little bit for the folks who are sitting here right now, kind of saying, do I go all in, whatever that represents? And maybe Shaun can speak to that in a second. Or do I kind of sit back and wait? Anything you want to add on that?
And I think it doesn't maybe have to be the either or of the all in or, right? There's a great statistical program in golf, and it's called Decade Golf. And they basically and there's a bunch of them out there now, but they've essentially accumulated all the data of, if you hit driver, this is what happens. If you lay back, this is what happens, right? And they basically just showed that as humans, we like we're uncomfortable often, right, with risk. We're uncomfortable with discomfort. So therefore we play safe, but all you're doing is just kind of kicking the barrel down the road. And now you're just making the next situation hard, right? So at some point, we do have to make that committed decision that even though our gut might tell us like, this isn't great, but kind of recognize this is also kind of why we play, right? Is to take that appropriate risk. And this is what ends up separating the average performer from the above average, right? They sit with the data and let it guide them. And then even when their emotion is telling them, no, play it safe, they commit to the data and stick with it and go with it and trust themselves that they can handle whatever the outcomes might be. And that's courage, right? It's not the absence of fear and risk. It is sitting with it and acting according to your values.
When you look back on your life, Matt, don't you? I mean, I think in most of us, when we look back on the biggest decisions we've ever made, they usually were the ones we were most frightened about. Whether it's personal or business, whether it was starting a company or getting married, there's all kinds of decisions that we had that we looked at and we were like, oh my God, but somehow we got over. But usually those ones that cause us the most angst are usually the most rewarding at the end of the day.
And from a physical perspective, right, we came on this call and I was telling Bill, I just came from the gym, right? And the only way we get physically stronger, right, is to stretch ourselves and lean into that discomfort, right? So in order to become more confident, more agile, more adaptable, more refined in your career, it's those that are willing to sit in that discomfort space. This is actually the growth opportunities with data, right? Again, it's not just random risk here, right? We want to take calculated, appropriate risks and sit with that discomfort.
So I think most of the people that are probably on this call and watching it from a real estate perspective, it's not, I don't know if it's so much in their shoes, they're looking at a big decision or a risk. I think if my guess is they're just struggling with how to win in this market, that the rules have changed somehow for them. And if they were lucky enough to live and work through 2007 to 2012, then there's some familiarity with that feeling or that sense of just the floor is shifting on me. But there are a lot of people that are in this business now that they missed that, right? So they don't have the luxury of going back to the playbook they had before. They've been working in Disneyland momentum world with Disneyland mortgage rates, and everybody thought that Disneyland was normal, and they forgot the fact that it's a fictitious company, right? That makes a bunch of money in animation. But it's and the reality is this is real life, right? This is real, but this is the for better or worse this is the commitment to owning and running a business that tests you, and it makes you. And I think what from a leadership standpoint, I think it's about simplification, right? Because people get over analytical with the data analysis by paralysis, and all that's very real at times like this. And I think people need to really zoom out when that fear is getting so big on their screen, or that sense of uncertainty is so big on their screen. They've got to zoom out and put it in perspective and realize, look, there are things we know and there are things we don't know. And let's go back to what we know about the market. Let's go back to what we know about things that cause success in real estate historically through any market. Let's go back to a time when were you crushing it, right? When was the last time you didn't feel a sense of uncertainty? When were you freaking crushing it as a business owner or as a salesperson or whatever your role is? And what were you doing then? Because my guess is, like most people, there's a natural tendency, and you probably see this in golf, I would guess. There's a natural tendency to get comfortable with where you are, and you just start experimenting with a little of this, and you change a little bit of that, and you change a little. Next thing you know, you've really departed from the blocking and tackling that got you where you are. And it's probably time to go back to the blocking and tackling mentality and look at, what were you doing when you were crushing it? And how is that different from what you're doing now? What was your mentality then? What's your mentality now? How did you approach things then? How do you approach things now? And my guess is, if you can identify where you are versus the last time you were crushing it, even though the market is different, my guess is you've got some behaviors that are very different than when you were crushing it, and you need to get back to that.
And the research is clear around that, right? The idea of confidence, right? The science word is self-efficacy, which truly means that I trust in my process, and my process will lead to the outcomes. Right? And I think that's what you're talking about here is let's get back to and let's clarify, right? What are the approaches that work for me and my market with my people? And let's commit to those and play the long game with those things. And then we can actually identify if a change needs to be made or not, right? But rather than just keep tapping and bouncing things around, let's commit to our process and let it play out.
One of the things in my book that I talk about is a not to-do list. And it's, I've got a saying that, we're all trying to put 10 pounds of poop into a 5-pound bag, right? So as a coach, when you say to somebody, all right, here's what I want you to do now, right? The immediate reaction is, I've already got 10 pounds of poop in this bag, and I don't have room to do something new. And
you mean you got to let go of something? No.
You got to let go of something. So my thing is, before we can talk about what you need to be doing, the first thing we really need to talk about is, what are you doing that's no longer serving you? Or what are you doing that was generating great returns for you, but now, because the market, the dynamics of the market have changed, maybe those things aren't as rewarding as they once were. And maybe there's something where you could spend more time and more energy or more money on that would generate more results. So before we can even tackle that, let's clear our plate and let's empty our bag a little bit and make some room for some new stuff. And then it's not so overwhelming, in my opinion.
I love the bag analogy, right? Because it is, as high performers, right? Which most people who are successful in this industry, they're high performers. And the hardest thing for high performers to do is to let go.
That's correct.
But yeah, right, to sustain and endure, letting go is often the first step.
Well, we have this sense of the more I carry, the more important I am, or the more successful I am, right? And I don't know that we think it that way, but I do think it subconsciously. There's a little bit of, it's why we brag about, how many people we worked with over the weekend and how much we did, when in fact you should be going, I'm embarrassed to have worked that many and shown that many houses, right? I've got a family. I should be spending time with those people. Why am I spending so much time with these other people? But I think we do have these warped senses of accomplishment or importance. And we naturally, as top producers, we actually gravitate towards responsibility, in my opinion. I think top producers love responsibility and love to prove that they are worthy of it. And sometimes that means they take on too much, in my experience. And so I really love this exercise of, tell me what you're doing. Let's say the rule is you have to commit to stopping 3 to 5 things in your business that you're doing and you're used to doing that you'll commit to not doing anymore if there was something better to replace it with.
So wait, I have a hardwired phone on my wall. Should I get rid of that and actually move to a cell phone?
I don't know. It's fun for the kids. I wouldn't get rid of that. Just the fun factor for the kids is they don't know what that thing is.
But right, this is, I think, what we're getting at, right? Is change can be hard, but we do need to kind of let go of our past existences to move forward effectively with what's directly in front of us.
So I'm going to share my screen because there's something. I think this leads into something that I wanted to talk about.
Let's do it.
Oh wait, boom, boom. Here we go. Boom. Sorry. So this is my energy quadrant, and can everybody see that all right?
Yep. Got it.
So this is my energy quadrant. If you're watching this, just recreate this on a piece of paper where you just divide a piece of paper into 4 quadrants. One's plus, one's minus, one's multiply, one's divide. And the exercise I take people through is this. In the plus category, I want you to list everything and everyone that falls into this category. These are the people that you spend time with and know and the tasks that you do. People and tasks. The people and tasks that add to the quality of your life and business and give you energy. And you take that and you add those tasks and people into that quadrant. Then you move to the subtract category, and these are the tasks and people that do not add to the quality of your life and business and do not necessarily give you energy. They might take it away, but they definitely do not add to the quality of your life and business, and they don't give you energy to do those tasks. Multiplication, if plus was good, this is great. This is your cash register. These are the people that have the biggest return on investment in your life, personally and professionally. These are the tasks that you do that create the most amount of return on time, energy, effort, and money. And they're probably the tasks that you love doing the most or love having your business do the most. Divide is the people and tasks that suck the life out of you. They're the things you hate doing. They're the people you pretend to be on the phone with when you see them walking down the hall. These are the things that you have to figure out how to either delete or create boundaries to filter them out. And then once we list all those things, the exercise I'll have people do is put a percentage in each category of the time you spend all week in each of these categories with these people or doing these tasks. And Bill, from our background with Keller Williams, this becomes a visual of the 80-20. Everything on the right side of this quadrant is the 80% stuff that generates 20% of your returns. Everything on the left is the 20% most important stuff that generates 80% of your returns. And so when you see it like that, you realize that I'm spending so much time in this subtract and division category. I have to, if my business is going to produce better results, I have to figure out a way to minimize those things. Maybe I'm hiring somebody else to do some things that I'm doing. Maybe I'm eliminating things altogether. Maybe I'm firing somebody. Maybe I'm firing a client. Maybe I'm just distancing myself from some things and people in a way that's just good for me so that I can spend more time on the plus and multiply side of this quadrant. And I found I've done this exercise with people for years, individually and in groups and classes, and it's never without an impact with people, because you can do this once a year, you can do this quarterly, and my guess is that there's just this, if it goes unchecked and you're not aware of this, there's just a gravitational pull towards subtract and division on this chart. The life just pulls you. It's like the undertow of the ocean. It just sucks you in unless you paddle against it. And the only way to paddle against it in my world is to actually look at it and see it for what it is and see people for who they are and actually do something about it. As a leader, your job is to make sure that you're pulling people to the left side of this quadrant in your organization. Make sure that the tasks that everyone's performing are geared to the most dollar productive activities that they can be doing, because the only way for your business to live in the left side of this quadrant is for everybody to live in the left side of this quadrant. Have people on the bus in the right seats, have people aligned in their thinking and energy and desire to achieve like everyone else does. And I think, Matt, you said something earlier. I'm going to stop the share on this. But Matt, you said something earlier that I thought was important about people in alignment. It's going to come to me in a minute. I had it, but I forgot what it was. But it tied into that.
And well, I can share my screen, right? If we care to take the deep dive, because I think you just covered a couple key pieces there. Before I share my screen to encapsulate from a mental emotional perspective what you just shared, I'm hearing the letting go, right? So first, we need to truly look at what's in front of us and decide, what do I need to let go of?
By the way,
create space.
Have you ever read the book Letting Go by David Hawkins?
I'm too much of a research nerd to read the pop stuff. I'm sorry.
No, it's not pop stuff. I'm telling. There's a guy named David Hawkins. He's
okay.
I read this book probably once every year or two. It's one of the best books, and it's about how to let go on stuff. I guarantee you would love this book.
And just reading through your book, a lot of it has to do with letting go, right? And that's key. So yeah, that first point, right, to your point of how do we create the effective hole for the poop to get the stuff out of, and then I think the second part is recognizing that And I'm guilty of this as anybody, right? I'm kind of the eternal optimist of, well, I'm going to turn that 20% over and I'm going to, make them better. And again, that's just part of that letting go, of appreciating there's certain things that are worth our energy, and certain things that suck us down. And that our environments really matter, right? So structuring, having people around us who share our same values, and it doesn't mean we have to share the same opinions, right? I want diversity around me, but we share a similar value and hold these same things true, that we hold each other accountable to things, right? So creating that environment and being intentional about that environment is also what really successful coaches, teams, right? In sports teams, this is what it's all about. Who can really create that culture to drive through the hard times and keep motivating through the great times, right? To keep separating it and keep the pedal down.
And don't you think that from a leadership standpoint, you need to be critically aware of where the line is between being appropriately optimistic versus being Pollyanna, where you have no credibility because you just aren't living on the same planet. I find a lot of people struggle with that line.
Sure. And this goes back to, I think, your statistical significance stuff, right? I've sat with Bill, and I think Bill does a great job of piercing through the numbers, right? And really penetrating and helping people identify, hey, here's the stuff worth paying attention to, and let's dump out the rest. And then it's critical to have that lens to look through.
Yeah, I've got a guy I've been consulting who's in a leadership position, and every time I got on the phone with him, he just his energy just made me nervous, and he's leading a lot of people, but it was just, everything's fast. And finally I woke up in the middle of the night and I was like, I had the visual that I needed. And when I called him the next morning, and I was like, I'm going to tell you that I woke up in the middle of the night thinking about you. And I was like, and this is what I thought. And I was like, I pictured you as a short order cook at the Waffle House. And I was like, and you had a busload of high school people walk in and order 100 different things. And you were whipping that grill around, and you were trying to take care of the eggs over here and the waffles over here and the milkshake over here and the T-bone over there. And you didn't want the eggs to burn and the grits to do and the thing to do. And I was like, you've got to calm down. I was like, because if you're making me nervous with your energy, my guess is your people that you actually lead are feeling the same thing and probably haven't put their finger on it, because it took me a little while. But I woke up last night clear as day on your energy is like you were a short order cook and you were falling behind on your orders, and you didn't have enough time for the eggs, and you didn't have enough time for the steaks, and you didn't have enough time for the waffles. And I was like, your people need to know that you've got to be present in the moment. You've got to slow down. You've got to not be so excitable in your speech. You're moving too fast, and you're not getting enough traction in any given moment. And so you're glossing over things, and you're missing opportunities to go deep and connect with people with your energy just because you're a little frenetic.
Emotional contagion is a thing, which, all right,
this bring all the science into
this was the perfect segue here. All right, I'm gonna share screen here. Bill, is this okay? We're just rambling. Is this okay with you?
This is totally fine. We knew, for better or worse, and for much for better, I would say, that this was going to happen. I think the folks who are hanging out with us right now, or who will watch the recording, also appreciate the two very different experienced angles that you guys bring to arrive at the same conclusion. So please continue.
All right, beautiful. So here's my far more complicated, unfortunately, quadrants, but I'm going to try to bring it all together and make this tangible. All right, sharing screen. Okay, can everybody see this one?
Yes, sir.
Yep.
Okay. So this is a continuum of motivation, right? And I think it's important, as Bill opened up this call, of understanding how to lead ourselves in order to then lead others. So the far left, right, is when you have just no motivation, and this is it, right? When there's no emotion, right? We need to exist with emotion in order to have some type of motivation. right? So I think this idea of just being apathetic and having nothing is not what we're striving for here. We want emotional folks, right? We want to be motivated and have something going on. And that it's the quality of the motivation that matters. It's not the quantity of. So if we look at the left, this external regulation, this is that leader who is throwing chairs and is just yelling and it's the carrots and the sticks, right? They're beating you for not doing something right, and they're trying to just dangle the carrot in front of you. Well, this is so off task, right? Shaun, I love how you use the word present, right? In my work, I'm trying to create a deep presence, right? And resonance with the work so that it's a this for this experience, right? I am deep in the work because I like the work for the sake of the work. And this is what this is about, right? This far left is a this for that. I am so off task. And therefore, actually, the emotions feel big because you're over here beating me with a stick and trying to force me into something that I don't want to do. And I'm just trying to evade and do whatever I can to just fight the emotion. And I'm not even thinking about the task or the work at hand. Right. So that from a motivations perspective, right, this is, and everybody thinks of motivation as the rah-rah speeches in the locker room beforehand. And again, that hits big until you get hit and then it's gone. Right. So we're looking for this more sustainable approach. So then the next level up, and this is the one that I think shocks people in the sport world, is winning. Right. So this self-esteem and guilt, and that we think winning is the ultimate motivation. But what happens when you get behind early? Desperation, right? And discomfort and all these things, again, so far off task, right? Or if you're leading towards the end, this is where the choke happens, right? We're so predetermined about the win and want that win so bad. We're, again, forgetting our process. We're forgetting what gets us there. We're losing track of how do we actually explode through the finish line and finish strong, right? The next couple levels up is what a lot of Bill and I talked about, again, with his board of advisors, and that's a values thing, right? Of yes, the outcomes are important. Of course, we all want the outcomes, but we as a team, we value discipline, or we value courage, or we value creativity, right? And when we can live these things out, it almost doesn't matter what the outcomes are as much, right? As long as we're living out our values, we are in the sweet spot. Right. So this is kind of where I'm always trying to lead folks of your values can also be beautiful emotional anchors for you to move forward with intent and not be responding constantly to what markets are doing, right? Or what outcomes are happening. This is the distracted athlete, right? There's so many distractions out there, but if I go deep with them on, hey, this is what we value, live out your values out there, you're in the sweet spot. The final level up, which I think is really cool, right? Is this true intrinsic, like childlike way, right? Of I'm just here for the curiosity or the challenge. I actually wear a bracelet, right, that says choose challenge. And this idea that, flow and the zone and any of these things, they only happen when we're met with a meaningful challenge. Again, it's not emotionless and calm. That actually doesn't create excellence. Right? We need that stimulation to actually bring us to that point of focus and control. So it's really interesting, right? How this plays out. So I'm always trying to kind of nudge people towards, let's value curiosity, let's value challenge, right? And let's make it about enjoyment, which is different than fun, right? To enjoy something, it means there's some stickiness here, there's some difficulty here, but I'm getting something from the experience itself that really keeps me in it, right? So this is that sustainable part. And I think this is what folks can be leaning into right now, right? So that top part is for ourselves. Now, if we think about our teams, right? So, and I actually switch, this was straight from the research. For people to remember, I actually switch the way these bottom, the C, the A, and the R, right? So on here, there are C, A, but I think of it as car, right? So if you think about trying to drive teams, think of a car, right? To remember these ideas. So competence. This was what you were talking about, Shaun. Are you putting the right people in the right place? Right. So I want to know that someone is competent in something. They have a fair level of skill for the task I'm giving them. They're going to be way more motivated to stay on task and to stay in the game. If I give them something way below, understimulated, they don't care. If I give something way above their competence level, that's discomfort, and they're going to either turtle or just bag out and go somewhere else, right? So really finding people and meeting them in their competence sweet spot matters. Autonomy. We value freedom of choice, right? We each like to have our own identities and ideas and ways to navigate. And that's important as leaders, right? I'm not saying to give people wide open carte blanche, right? I actually use the example of if you send someone to go get you cereal and they'd never seen cereal before, and you send them out to the major grocery store in your major city, and there's all this choice, and they're frozen. They also can't make a choice, right? So, but giving people appropriate level of choice for their skill, and it might just mean, hey, you can pick A, B, or C. Go for it, right? So you're kind of predetermining some tasks, but give them the choice of kind of the choose your own adventure whenever possible, right? So create autonomy in people. And then, Shaun, you pointed out again that the most important is the relationships, right? And this is why all of us are on this call, right? I care about Bill and his family deeply, and that matters to me. And so I'm willing to do whatever it takes, right, for his crew, right? If there's a burning building, well, I'm grabbing my family first and getting them out of there before I'm touching anybody else. So it's the same with your teams, right? You have to show that there is a connection and a care and an appreciation, because then I am going to be way more willing to hang with you through thick and thin and any times, right? So I think these are things that people might kind of intuitively understand, but I think these are really important levers to learn how to pull, and to use this car analogy to really lead us and motivate us and sustain us through all kinds of markets and times.
Well, the relationship side of it's pretty interesting because, again, if you're going through a market like we're in, where there's a lot of uncertainty, it exposes a lot of things. One of the things that exposes is bosses for who they are. And there are a lot of people, and we've seen a lot of companies in our industry where they've got an awesome marketing pitch about how awesome they value people and what they do, and they make you feel all warm and fuzzy. Their brochure is really pretty. And then you get in there, and then you get in a weird market, and all of a sudden it turns into some kind of sweatshop where people, they don't really give a damn about anybody but the results. And I think if you're on this call and you're a leader, be careful that this market isn't exposing you as a fraud of a leader, and that you had a good marketing pitch, but you aren't living it when the going gets tough. And I think this is where leadership really earns its stripes and shows up in terms of its true authenticity. And that is, I really do care about my people, and we're going to have some real conversations, and we're going to figure out how to win in this market. And I know it's tough, and I'm not going to pretend it's not, but these are the answers that we're going to have. And this is how we're going to approach turning our ship around and finding new direction and finding new purpose and finding new results and finding traction where we've been slipping and sliding. It feels like we've been slipping and sliding in the mud for a while. We're going to put some cleats on, and we're going to start getting some traction. We're going to get out of here.
And the idea of, again, as humans, we like to control stuff, right? But the more as leaders we try to control, you're actually losing your best people, right? You're taking their autonomy away, and you're the people with the brightest ideas and the most willing to risk appropriately, they're going to go find someone else to work for. And this is the time when you want those folks and you want those diverse voices in the room, right, to kind of listen to. And it doesn't mean you need to jump on every time bomb, but have open discussions, open communication, listen, gain decent perspective, and then give it a fair test of time.
Funny story about that. So, and I think you're right, because we tend to want to be the smartest person in the room, and that's dangerous. I got an uncle who's a multi-millionaire, and he developed a software. He's in the rental business, like equipment rental and all that stuff, and developed software for it or whatever. But once upon a time, when he got out of high school, he worked for the Ford Motor Company here in Atlanta, and Ford every year had a suggestion box for their employees of what they could do to improve the cars they were building. And they had like rewards or prizes or bonuses or whatever it was. Well, his suggestion, he put a suggestion in the box, and the suggestion was, I think when you open the trunk, it's so big and dark in those big old cars. He's like, I think you should put a light in the trunk. Right. And they picked his suggestion, and they gave him a new car. And I've always loved that story, because you realize the people on the floor probably know more about how your business can improve in a way that you wouldn't even think about it, because you're not the one putting the stuff in the computer system. You're not the one handling the organizational. There's just a lot that you oversee but don't do. And the people that are doing things, if you can put your ego aside and go, who's got a great idea? Because it ain't me, right? Particularly in a time like this. What are we seeing? Where do we have opportunity? Where does somebody recognize a way for us to be more efficient or more effective or more profitable or more cost-cutting in a smart way? You don't have all those answers as the leader, but if you have a great relationship with your people and you can put your ego aside and realize that you hired people because they are smart, let them freaking prove it, and give them an opportunity to do so, you're going to be amazed at something as simple as putting a light in the trunk, what that'll do to the sale of your cars.
And it actually lets you sit back and enjoy the show a little bit as a leader, right?
And appreciate the fact that you have good people.
Right.
Like, as much as you have to prove yourself, I also think these markets give your people an opportunity to prove themselves too, but you have to give them that voice, and you have to give them that opportunity.
I love it, right? And I watch coaching in real time, and I see a coach who's deeply involved in practice and then sits back and just lets the play unfold in games. And that's the coach who I know gets it, and that's the team that I know is going to really amplify in the postseason.
Right.
But guys, as we spend maybe about 10 minutes or so in further discussion before we get a Q&A, there's a couple of things that I very much enjoyed as just sort of sitting back and watching you guys riff off of each other's ideas, which is fantastic. There's a couple of things that I pinned both from this and from our previous conversations that I hope you might speak on. Shaun, I'll come to you first on this. I'm going to combine two ideas that I've heard you share many times in the now nearly 15 years that we've worked together in different capacities. One is your concept of faith-based leadership in a time like this. And then the other, and when you were with our board of advisors group back in January, you used the analogy of like running the plays and doing the right things, and the points aren't necessarily showing up on the board yet. So I wonder if you might just take those and run with that, please.
Yeah, for sure. So when I was talking about what we did back in 2007 and 8, where we came up with the statistical stuff, at the time, it seemed like a good idea, but we didn't know. We were trying to find a way to provide something of value that we thought would have some playtime. And that's what we came up with, right? So in hindsight, it was awesome. But on the front end of that, you really don't know. But it's kind of like what Maxwell always, said, make your decisions and then make them right. I think part of leadership is in leading through uncertainty. I think there's always uncertainty when you put a flag in the ground and say, we're going to go this way. Even when market conditions are great, you're still making decisions on the faith that it's a good decision. And I think that people need to realize that that can be a little scary, but you have to embrace. You have to make your decisions as a leader, and you have to embrace them. And they may end up in failure, or they may end up in an opportunity to, of course, correct along the way. But you have to, when you decide this is the path we're going to go, you got to go, and you got to make sure everybody's in alignment and going there, and with the understanding that, look, if we determine that this is not the right direction, we always have the opportunity to course correct, and we will, I assure you. But if it's right and we're ahead of the curve and because I think when you look back, the best leaders in the world make the best decisions in the absence of the most information. They have this gut sense, or they have that that feeling based on their experience and their time on the planet or in the role or in certain conditions, that this is the way we need to go, because, and I might not even be able to explain it, because I just know this is the way we need to go. And if you are in relationship with your people, if you're good at vision casting, and you are good at sales, which most people are on this call, and you combine all those three, I think you can get the world to follow you in a direction, because you're smart and you're believable and you're trustworthy, and you're passionate about what you're doing and why you're doing it. And if you're missing any of those components, you're going to feel like you're the only one going in a direction and wondering where everyone else is around you. And if that's the case, it's because you're missing one of those components.
Shaun, I coined or used the term being willing to miss. Right. So, it's this idea that we are committing to this and we are going for it. And because, with my golfers, if they're holding on to it and doubting, that thing's spraying. Right? At some point, it just has to be like, here's the target and we're going, and I'm going to give it 10 swings before I deviate, and let's roll. And that takes courage and discipline. But that's kind of this, in these markets, this is what it takes.
I can remember when we were growing our company here in Atlanta, and I had an agent that came to my office who was super frustrated. I think it was probably about our technology or something, because it's been through lots of different variations of good and bad and anywhere in between. But I think they were upset, and they were like, what's going? I was like, I'm going to tell you a secret. I was like, and here's the secret. We don't know what we're doing. And the guy looked at me. He's like, what do you mean? I was like, we have no idea what it's like to be a company at 50,000 agents. We have no idea. We've never been at 50,000 agents. Everything we've done is based on the fact that we know how to be a 25,000 agent company. And this is a whole new world for us. But here's the deal. If you pay attention to us as a company, we believe that you have to fail to, we don't get it right by getting it right. Right. And we're the first as a company. We will go out first. We will screw up first. We will screw up fast. And that pendulum will swing this way, and you'll be frustrated, and you'll be in the office complaining about this. And then in 6 months later, you'll be complaining because we have completely overcorrected for that issue that we're well aware of. And then somewhere after, we'll find a sweet spot in the middle where we will hover. And that's going to be the new norm until the next time comes up where we realize we don't know what we have no idea what we're doing, because we've never been at 75,000 agents. And then it was 100, and then it was 150,000 agents. But when you're breaking new territory, I think it's important to realize and communicate, I'm making decisions that I think are going to get us to the next level. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that I don't know, but we're going to figure it out together, right? That's why we're on the team.
That's beautiful. Our goals honestly limit us a lot of times, right? And that's where, on that intrinsic, right, going back to curiosity was number one, right? When we admit, I don't know. And this is why I talked with the board of advisors group of curiosity, right? If you go to the movies, and if I told you exactly what's going to happen at the end before you go into the theater, what's the point? No, so being open to these changes and wanting that and desiring that, and just understanding that it's going to ebb and flow, and that's the beauty of it all. You again are in the consistent sweet spot. So I love that, Shaun. The not knowing is actually the beauty of it all.
If we knew everything, we'd be freaking bored.
Yep.
Life would be boring.
Yep.
Just think about how interesting life is right now, and be appreciative of it.
That's right.
Yeah.
Interesting for sure. Matt, there's one thing I want to follow up on with you, please. And then for those of you who are with us here live, as I mentioned, we'll do a little bit of Q&A at the end. If you wouldn't mind, go ahead and maybe queue up your questions in the chat box, and then either I will grab them, or Sherry, our director of ops and marketing, is hanging out in the background to help grab and filter those. So we will have a few minutes at the end of the call for that. Matt, and this is kind of connected to the conversation that you and Shaun were just having. So run with this any way that you want to. Knowns versus unknowns, things we can control versus things that we can't control. There are a lot of smart control freaks, including me on this call. Maybe you guys can relate to that a little bit. Maybe others can relate to the desire to know it all and the desire to control it all, and why that's not the route we want to go.
Yeah, I think it's it just can be limiting, and the idea that change, right, is inevitable, and it's kind of cool and fun and interesting. And I'm not saying go nilly-willy, right? I think this is back to that idea of, I like where Shaun started the call of statistics matter, right? So my golfers, again, if they step up to the first tee, they hit their first tee shot left, they're going to go to the second tee, and I'm going to ask them, okay, what are you going to do? And I hope that they say the same thing. I'm not going to change. I'm not going to course correct. I'm not going to do anything major here. And I'm going to, again, trust my process and keep seeing that out, right? So I think it's this idea of give things a fair test of time, whatever you want to acknowledge that to be, right? When I'm setting goals with my folks, to me, it's not really about what's the exact desired outcome you want, but more of, hey, what are we curious about here? What are we trying to find out? How long are you willing to give it? Who are you taking with you? All right, cool. Let's ride it out. That to me is an effective goal strategy, right? So those three pieces of what are you curious about? Who are you taking with you? And how long are you willing to give it? Mm-hmm. This is good science, right? And this is, I think, all the things that Shaun alluded to earlier, right? Of kind of just wrapping the science around it, right? To justify those things. So yeah, I think right in times like this, I'd say those kind of three things, right? What are you curious about? And it's not necessarily always outcome driven. Of course, we all want market share, right? We want dollars in our pockets. We want all those outcomes. But those things, right, gets us distracted.
Let me stop you there, because Georgia Tech has one of the top entrepreneurial schools in the country. And I got to hear the guy who runs that speak a few years back. And he said, here's the premise of our school and the students that we have. He said, the premise is, and we tell every one of them, your job is to find a hole in the world and fill it. That's what we exist to help you figure out how to be more curious, ask more questions, find things that other people are overlooking, the light in the trunk, right? Or the stories, why are people not putting their house on the market? We tell ourselves the story that they have a 2.5% mortgage and that's why, but my guess is that probably only applies to about 40% of the people. So what about the other 60%? How curious can you be about what the real story is and find a hole in the market and fill it? And I think that starts exactly with what you're saying of that curiosity piece. And I think if people realize, what does curiosity mean to me? Well, where are you ending statements with a period that you should be ending with a question mark? Because I do believe a lot of top producers are not great at asking questions. They're really good at giving information. And that information they give is based on the story they think they know in their brain, instead of going, what's in Bill's brain or what's in Matt's brain, and what's in there that could help me unlock an opportunity for me and find a hole in the world and fill it because of what he's truly experiencing it. Because one of the things I've had agents do with this mastermind I'm running is I'm going, look at all the transactions you've got this year and analyze, where did they come from? And is there any one or two or three transactions that came about in a way that seemed happenstance, and look at it and go, is there an opportunity to go mine for those kinds of leads specifically? I've never done that before, but you know what? I've had 3 empty nesters who want to do blank because of blank, and it's all kind of similar, and it just was kind of freaky coincidental. But what if it wasn't coincidental? Is there an opportunity where we could find 100 more of those transactions in our town if we really communicated the value that we just provided and what we figured out in those transactions? I don't know, but you have to ask the question to find out.
When we finish up our call, I'll be headed over to the tennis academy. So I work with Stan Smith and his coaches and athletes. And I asked the question of, why do they play tennis, right? I love kind of opening that up to the kids and then the coaches. And Stan's answer was #1 in the world, right? And now his shoe, right, is just incredibly successful. His answer was, why do you play tennis? I love to solve problems. What a heavy, deep, sustainable driver, right? And in your world,
Right.
in the real estate world, you're solving problems all day long. So if you learn to love that and seek that, sweet spot.
That's awesome.
Absolutely.
What a gift to work with.
Guys, be thinking about maybe some parting words that you want to leave both with our live audience and then those who will ultimately see the recording. I'm going to take a peek in the chat box real quick, see if we had any questions roll in. If you do have questions for Matt or Shaun, we've got maybe another 10 minutes or so that we could tackle those. As we're waiting on those to come in, I was talking with one of our longtime top clients this morning, and they were very excited about this. Unfortunately, not able to make it to the live session. However, they asked that I would bring a question, and this could be for either or both of you. I'll go to Matt first, though. Matt, you mentioned the idea of quality of motivation compared to quantity of motivation. That was something we covered in our prep call a couple of weeks ago. And I think this is a fascinating concept. So maybe kind of give us the quick riff on that. And then I see we've got some folks who have some questions as well.
Yeah, and that's where, right, and I think Sherry might be sharing that self-determination theory document.
Yep.
Right?
Yep. Everybody will get a copy of that.
So what we're talking about, right, is the farther right on that continuum you can go, that's this more sustainable, higher quality motivation, right? And we get it from you go to Burger King or you go to a fine dining restaurant, right? The quality is going to be different, and what's going to actually sustain your body for a little while longer, it's that higher quality thing. Hey, I'm all about going fast food every now and again, but I know that is not going to sustain me, right? So just if we think of motivation in the same way, it's not just the quick big hit that might get you in the door, but it's not going to keep you in the fight, in the game.
And I would add to that, and Bill, this goes probably back to our training as well initially, and that is, when you've got times like this, if you're a leader of a team, you're probably pretty clear about what your vision is or what your mission is as a leader, or what you want your team to be. I think the responsibility and one of the challenges you have is making sure that your vision has enough room for everyone else's personal vision on your team. And look, there's a lot of people that have been in the have fallen prey to, I'm going to hire somebody, and because I hire somebody, I expect you to do things for me, right? And they hired them with that mentality, and they didn't hire them with the mentality of, and in exchange for that, I have to be responsible enough to be willing and able to do things for you that are important for you too. If you're going to help me build this business, I want to help you build the life that you want to build too. And I want to have a chapter in that book. So I need to know what's important to you. I need to know what drives you. I need to know what motivates every member of my team. In addition to the global aspects of what I want and what I want my team to do, I have a responsibility to know that you want to have a house in the mountains and you want to spend 50% of your time there in the next 5 years. And I need to be willing to help you do that, or I really shouldn't hire you. And because when you get in these times, again, times get tough is when people start picking apart the weaknesses in the people they work with and for. And you've got to make sure that you're running a solid game and that you have a motivation, as Matt says, that's bigger than just you and takes on the responsibility of your team, which I believe everybody naturally has as a leader. So tap into that and find some systems and structure in your world to make sure that you're really taking care of people by showing them that you give a damn, right?
If you're leading through a transactional lens, your agents are going to sell in a very transactional lens, right? So you create that landscape, right, versus the relational, right? We want these more relational, right? It's about the relationship and the caring and understanding of each other. Well, that's then going to show this is how we do business, and this is also going to lead to success in the market.
And that isn't that just an indicator of our standards anyway, right? So we have these, whether we can say, we can have a chart on the wall that we say these are our standards, but ultimately that chart on the wall doesn't mean anything if you're performing at a different level and your behaviors really, those are just a marketing ploy. Your standards are the behaviors you exhibit personally and you allow on your team. So you're right. That's a great point.
Yeah, well said for sure. I think we've got time for one question. I see Zach has a hand raised here. Coach Zach, welcome to the party, my friend. And we'd love to have your question for the guys, please.
Hey guys, really great to be here with you. Fascinating stuff. I was just curious, as we started it off, letting go of things that that are no longer serving us. Is there sort of a method by which you say, okay, well, if we're going to analyze this, where do we start?
I'd start with that energy quadrant.
Yeah.
I mean, simply that I would start there. It really sheds a lot of light on tasks that you're doing that may be outdated and no longer rewarding. People that you have around you that just aren't filling your bucket or adding to the value of your business. I really believe that energy quadrant creates a whole nother dimension of evaluation for your business and an opportunity to do something about it. So I would start there. But it's when we talked about the prep for this call a week or so ago, I was telling how wherever I go, people will stop me and say, hey, can you tell me what I need to be doing, like in a 5-minute coaching session, right? Or just point me in the direction, pat me on the butt, and put me back out on the field. And I had to figure out a way to respond to that because it was happening a lot. And my natural response to that, Zach, was I learned to just say, let me ask you a question. Because most people, if they take the test of what are the most important things that you should be doing in your business, on paper, I think most every person at every level of production knows the answer to that, and they score 100% on the test, right? For salespeople, if you haven't accepted lead generation as your Lord and Savior, you're probably going to hell as a business, right? I mean, it's kind of where it goes. But typically, I would just ask and say, look, what do you feel most guilty about not doing as a business owner? What do you feel what do you know you should be doing that you're not doing? What do you feel most guilty about? Everybody's got an answer to that question. And so I would just say, do that. And that was my 5-minute coaching session. It was just, what do you feel most guilty about doing or not doing? Do that.
And I would double down right on that quadrant idea. And what I hear from Shaun is it's so much of it is the people, right? Of who are you really surrounding yourself with? And
we're related to some of them. We're related to some of the deletes.
Right. And so the relationships, right, help create that environment. But to me, it's what do you value, right, as a human being, right, and as a business owner. And as long as you're living out those values, and the things that are not meeting those values, those are the things that I'm hearing from Shaun is in that right column that you let go of, right? But that means sitting with some tough stuff, right? And having to drop some things.
Bingo.
Absolutely. Well, guys, this has been a lot of fun. I really appreciate your time and your wisdom, and in the spirit of people who are multipliers in relationships. I'm thankful to have both of you as that, both as friends and mentors. And I know you've added a lot to the group today. As we talked about before, this is probably just the appetizer to something that we'll do much more of in the future. Those of you who are here with us live, you'll also get copies of all the resources that the guys mentioned. Shaun or Matt, anything you want to leave the crew with before we wrap up today?
Just that you're awesome, and Matt's maybe even more awesome than you, if that's possible. I mean, I could hang out with the two of you all day long. This has been this has been fun, and I hope it's been as impactful to people as it feels like it might have been. But it's look, you're doing great stuff, and I love your brain, and I love your heart, and I love what you're doing for your people, and you're always wanting to contribute and add value. And anytime I can draft a little bit behind you, it's good for me. So thanks for allowing me the opportunity to fly around with you guys, because you're amazing.
Absolutely, the feeling's mutual, my friend. Matt, any parting words for the crew?
I mean, I echo the same, right? If I had a second bracelet, right, aside from this choose challenge, it's the compete with, right? We need each other, and this is the Olympic spirit, right? In order to gain expertise and be great at anything, you've got to have others around you who push you and challenge you and support you, right? But certainly, that sense of community is important, and I love that, Bill, you've created that for us on this call, and thank you.
Yeah, it was my pleasure, guys. Thanks for your brain power. I really appreciate it. And we'll see you on the other side. Thanks, everybody.
Take care.